Does this feel absurd? That's exactly the point. Imagine a world where baptism has been rebranded. Studios line the streets offering hot baptism, power baptism, therapeutic immersion. Certified instructors complete a 200-hour training. There are memberships, workshops, retreats, and even glossy publications. Baptism Journal, International Baptism. The practitioners insist this has nothing to do with Christianity. It's simply water-based purification, health, and wellness. When questioned, one responds, times have changed. People are secular now. We've adopted the word for modern audiences. If pressed further, everyone needs to make a living. Why shouldn't it be marketable and brandable? At first, the scenario feels absurd, but only because we recognize instinctively that baptism is not a neutral term. It is a sacred Christian rite carrying centuries of meaning, theology, and lived tradition. To remove that meaning while keeping the name feels to many like a distortion at best. Now consider this. Is this not precisely what has happened to yoga? Yoga from sacred path to market category across the modern landscape. We do find hot yoga, power yoga, goat yoga, beer yoga, doggy yoga, laughter yoga, even nude yoga. And of course, innumerable brands, Kino's Yoga, Adrian's Yoga, studios, certifications, brands, influencers, and global markets, all built around the word yoga. And when questioned, the same responses seem to appear. Yoga today is just exercise. It's all about wellness, not religion. It's been adapted for modern life. But here is the essential point. Yoga is not originally an exercise system. Yoga emerges from the Hindu tradition as a sacred discipline, a path aimed at liberation, at ultimate reality. The very meaning of the Sanskrit Hindu word yoga, yuj atman brahman cha, to yoke to one's atmana and Brahman. We're already deeply into Hindu philosophy, the Hindu religion. What is atmana? What is Brahman? And the various yogas are the means by which Hindus achieve this atmadarshana, or spiritual, if you will, realization. Karma Yoga, Hindu ethics, Bhakti Yoga, Hindu devotions, Raja Yoga, Hindu contemplations, Gyan Yoga, Hindu studies outwardly and inwardly. And then there's Mantra Yoga, Hindu devotional chants, Japa Yoga, Hindu devotional chants on beads, Natya Yoga, Hindu devotional dance, Bharatnatyam, for example, Nada Yoga, Hindu devotional music, bhajans, kirtans. And you know, of all the classic yogas, there was only one that the Rishi said keep secret, and that was Hatha Yoga. The very one that's out there today under the guise of yoga. And why? Because they knew it would be distorted into simply an exercise routine, a body infatuation, and perhaps a vague spirituality. So yoga does emerge from the Hindu tradition as a sacred discipline. And this is not about exclusion. Hindu traditions have historically been open, welcoming sincere seekers from all backgrounds. The question is, can something be separated from its roots and still honestly bear its original name? If baptism without Christ is no longer baptism, then what is yoga when removed from its foundation? Adaptation or redefinition or appropriation? Cultures evolve, practices travel, adaptation happens, but there is a difference between adapting a tradition while honoring its source and redefining a tradition while retaining its name for appeal. This is a call for clarity. This is not a demand that everyone become Hindu. It's a call for honesty. If one wants to teach any of the religions of the world, the first step would be to become part of that religion. Vast difference between the student and the teacher. Anyone's welcome to study the various religious traditions of the world, but a teacher is something else. If what is being taught today is stretching, breath work, and relaxation, it can stand on its own merit and should honestly be called that. But if the word yoga is used and its origins are erased, it risks losing meaning entirely. Are we expanding understanding or quietly emptying it? In a wellness culture that prizes openness and accessibility, few words really have traveled as far or changed as much as quote-unquote yoga. Scroll through social media and you will find it everywhere. The term has become so elastic that it now seems to encompass nearly any activity involving movement, relaxation, or mild exertion. This expansion is often celebrated as a sign of yoga's universal appeal. But there's a quieter question beneath the enthusiasm. When a practice comes to mean everything, does it begin to mean nothing? To see the issue more clearly, again, step outside of yoga for a moment. Imagine baptism, a sacred rite within Christianity, framed as a form of underwater therapy, valued for circulation, breath control, relaxation. Or imagine communion, once a sacred, deep theological significance within Christianity, recast as a refined wine-tasting experience. In both cases, the physical elements remain and even some benefits may persist, but most would recognize immediately that something essential has been altered. Yet when a similar shift occurs within yoga, the response is often different. The impulse towards inclusion has an understandable appeal. In a fragmented world, the idea of all paths are equally valid or even identical offers a sense of harmony, but there's a cost. When distinctions are erased in the name of openness, the very identity of a tradition can dissolve. Yoga in its classical context is not merely a system of physical exercise. It emerges from a vast and intricate body of Hindu philosophy and practice, encompassing ethics, devotion, discipline, meditation, and ultimately liberation. To reduce it to stretching, however, beneficial that stretching may be, is not to simply adapt yoga, it's to totally redefine it. If one wants to come up with something new, do that. And none of this is to deny that Hatha Yoga can offer real value. Physical movement, stress reduction, community are worthwhile in their own right. Nor is this to suggest that tradition must remain frozen for all time. Cultural exchange and adaptation are inevitable and often enriching, but adaptation requires clarity. Without it, we risk confusing transformation with substitution, using the same word to describe fundamentally different things. And what about the naive students who perhaps don't realize that yoga is all about the Hindu religion, and they be introduced into a theological framework that they're not at all comfortable with? There's a difference between practicing yoga and practicing something inspired by yoga. Why not have a stretch and relaxation class? And if learned from Hatha Yoga, admit that, but leave all the yoga and the Hinduism out of it, and then it becomes, as it truly is, a secular exercise for a fee. There is a difference between expanding meaning and dissolving it altogether. If everything is yoga, then yoga no longer refers to anything in particular. It becomes a label without content, a word that gestures broadly but points nowhere. The question then is not whether these contemporary practices are beneficial. Many of them are. The question is whether we are willing to be honest about what they are and what they are not. From there, the choice belongs to the individual. One may embrace traditional yoga in its full philosophical depth. That would mean becoming a Hindu. This is possible. One can become a member of any of the religions of the world. It would require in-depth study, of course, and then in the case of Hinduism, the Namakarana Samskara, wherein one gets a name, often very typical of any religion, a name indicative of that specific religion. In an age that often blurs boundaries in the name of inclusivity, there is a quiet dignity in naming things as they are. Not to exclude, but to understand. And understanding, after all, is the beginning of any genuine practice. Jai Hindu Yoga Dharma.